Hello, people of YouTube. I haven't made a video in a while, but I am gonna be playing catch up now. So I'm gonna start off where we left off with my last video. I'm gonna finish by finishing my first month of Dragon Ball Z / comic book reviews. The comics I'm gonna be reviewing today are Grayson #7 and Batman and Robin issue number 39. And the episode I am reviewing today, I'm looking just to make sure I get the name right. Goku's new... Welcome back, Goku. Confessions of the Mysterious Youth Trunks. I'll start with the episode. It was a really good episode. I like the scenes of sparring between Trunks and Goku. I thought that was really neat and fun to watch. And I also really like the origins and the storytelling of what happens to the Z fighters. And I just thought it was a really entertaining episode. It was a pretty good episode. I'll just sit it on it. And then I will start with the Grayson review. But this is a very good comic. What happens in the comic, there are potential spoilers in here. Well, I highly recommend reading this book if you want to like pause the video, quickly read the book, and then watch this video, or whatever. This is a good comic. I especially like how they actually incorporated Bible stuff into this comic, and I thought it was really neat. Because, while they are fighting in the Fist of Cain, and, some background information, they're not like the first, story arc in Grayson. They've been collecting, like, these super organs that have all kinds of super different abilities. But this is the last one, what is the super brain, what causes people to just become like instantly angry. And the main bad guys of the comic are this organization called the Fist of Cain. And they go undercover as a band and cause this big riot at like this festival / concert thing. What leads to a big fight, but meanwhile the fight begins. Grayson has recently been captured by the organization that Midnighter works for. And he has to, this is where the Bible stuff comes in. He is talking to the head of Midnighter's agency. And it actually talks a lot about forgiveness and how we're not supposed to cast judgment and stuff like that. What I really enjoyed. well, I'm not gonna go too in depth with it because I really enjoyed it, and I think it was definitely my most favorite part of the book, so I wouldn't necessarily want to give too much of that away. But I loved this issue. It was a very good, solid issue, and I really liked the Grayson comic book title, just because, like, you get the feeling of a superhero comic, and, it's like a superhero comic book, but it also has a feel of like an old James Bond film at times. What I really like the James Bond films also. So it was a great issue. It was. And then I'm down to my last comic book. Now I'll be reviewing Batman and Robin issue number 39. Something that I really enjoyed is like the homage they pay to Action Comics number 1 in the cover. If you look at this cover really close, and then you go and look at the cover for Action Comics number 1, the debut of Superman, it is drawn with different stuff in it, but like the setup is pretty close to the same cover as Action Comics number 1. But that kind of little hint thing I thought was really cool and really neat. And what I think I really enjoyed this comic. It actually starts with Damian Wayne using his new superpowers to kind of strike fear into a few of Batman's villains. He doesn't necessarily hurt them, but he does threaten them. Batman ends up having to save the villain because Damian loses his grip on the rope that he's like holding them up with. You get to see this nice bonding, heartwarming conversation with Bruce Wayne and Damian Wayne. They're fishing, and Damian Wayne's asking about his powers. And I just thought it was really nice, and that conversation ended really nicely. Then there was this one thing that made me laugh. They had to catch at least one fish before they came back. So Damian Wayne actually flies underneath the water, picks up the boat, and skewers a fish with the fishing pole, and I just thought that was really, really funny. And then there was this something going on with the Justice League, and Damian was allowed to go with Batman, and then there's some really funny stuff with Damian Wayne meets Shazam, and their conversation, it was hard to read just because it made me laugh really hard, just because you could tell Shazam was being kind of childish, but Damian was being really grown up in his side of the conversation. And just those two points bouncing off of each other was just hilarious. I also really enjoyed this issue. It's actually one of my most favorite comics that I've honestly read in a pretty long time. And the verse that I'm gonna quote today is John 3:17. I'm gonna do the King James version. God did not send his Son into the world to condemn the world, but that through him the world shall be saved. And this was my last Dragon Ball review until I do this mini-series coming up where I'm going to be reviewing the Android Saga and Forever Evil. So with that being said, may God be with you and see you next time. Hello people of YouTube, Religious Fanboy here. I've decided to make 2 new series for my YouTube channel. Fanboy Theater, episode 1 is gonna be this video. And the other series, along with my original content, what are the comic reviews, I am going to do an anime review series called The Church Cat Bus. But if you've seen My Neighbor Totoro, you kind of would get where I get the idea for the cat bus. And I highly recommend that movie. And we're doing something that I'm adding just new to my videos for the first time in this video, is something that I like to call 5 random Bible verses. What we're gonna read, I'm gonna read Bible verses 1 through 5 of Psalms chapter 50. God the Lord God speaks. He summons the earth from east to west, from Zion, the perfection of beauty. God appears in the radiance. Our God is coming. He will not be silent. The devouring fire precedes him, and the storm rages around him. On high, he summons heaven and earth in order to judge his people. Gather my faith ones to me, those who made covenant with me by sacrifice. My first movie review is actually the newest DC animated film, Justice League Gods and Monsters, made by Bruce Timm. Well, this is a Justice League that is not at all like the one that we're used to. Well, I really like the kind of message it has and the lesson that is learned here. What the main plot is, the Justice League are being framed for the deaths of scientists. And while that is going on, there is like a subplot / major plot about how the Justice League are thinking that they are above the law, because this Justice League are when they're not like the ones that we're used to, I mean, they are basically extremely violent and not hesitant to kill people, but they do learn a lesson. What I think is really good how that is shown when Superman asks Batman in the end of the movie, how about we become a legitimate team and actually go out on patrol and stop killing. What I thought was just really nice, just because I'm really happy that they learned the lesson and it was told very well. What there is a surprise twist in who's the person that is making these robots that are used to frame the Justice League. But I am not going to give that away because that is a really good thing. And the setting and stuff like that. I really like this because it actually reminds me of the main graphic novel that this reminds me of is actually Dark Knight Returns. With like the newscasting and like the gray area with the justice system and everything. Well, I just think that those kind of things make for a cool aspect of a good story. And it kind of makes the heroes kind of more gray and not just black and white. What I think makes the story more interesting because it actually makes the viewer or the reader have to think. Instead of just knowing like, he's a hero, he's a villain, they're gonna fight. And that is all for this video. May God be with you, and see you next time. Hello people of YouTube again. I am the religious fanboy. And instead of doing a random 5 verses, I'm actually gonna read a whole chapter of the Bible just because I really like it, and personally I've found it to be extremely comforting. I'm going to read Psalms chapter 23. The Lord is my shepherd. There is nothing I lack. He lets me lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside quiet waters. He renews my life. He leads me along the right path for His name's sake. Even when I go through the darkest valley, I fear no danger, for you are with me. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me. You prepare a table before me in the presence of my enemies. You anoint my head with oil. My cup overflows. Only goodness and faithful love will pursue me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord as long as I live. And usually the only anime that I've been reviewing is Dragon Ball Z stuff, but I'm actually gonna, in this video, I'm going to review, I'm gonna do the first 2 episodes of Sword Art Online. If you want to watch it, because I highly recommend the show, you can, if you have Netflix, the English sub and the dub are both on Netflix. And also it is still on Toonami as of right now. Well, I got into this show because one of my very good friends actually recommended it to me a couple of months ago. I've already watched the first 2 seasons, so I thought I'd review it. And just said, well, first I'm gonna talk about the main premise of, well, the first season, at least. There's this game that is called Sword Art Online. When the first episode, the game launches, and the main character the main male protagonist is a teenager named Kirito, who was actually a beta tester for the game. And the first episode takes place on the launch of the game. And he meets a new friend named Klein, who's, I guess the gamer term would be, he would be called a noob at RPGs. And when Klein and Kirito tried to log out, they noticed mysteriously that the logout option has been taken out of the game's hard drive. And then the creator of the game appears in the main social part of the game called the Town of Beginnings. And he basically tells them that he simply says if you die in the game, you die in real life, and you can't leave the game until you clear the game. What is basically what the setting is, I can't quite remember the name of the castle, but it's this castle with 100 floors. And you have to beat the boss on the 100th floor to clear the game. And also they say, like, I give people try to, from the real world, try to get the helmet off of you, then you also die. So basically the only way to escape the game is to beat it. And what there is one part that actually is quite comedic. The guy gives everyone a mirror. But when they look at it, it actually modifies their avatar to look and be exactly like the actual player. There's this one funny part where I guess there's this thing with virtual reality games where some guys dress up as girls for some reason, and just the effect of the mirror, it's really funny. In one of those scenes they actually kind of make that joke, and it made me laugh. And the second episode is they beat the final boss. I really like this one minor character in the second episode, because there's this other minor character that actually starts insulting the beta testers just because he blames the beta testers just because they got to play the game beforehand and they should have known about it. But they didn't. And this one guy actually stands up for the beta testers, and he talks about how the beta testers were handing out these game journals to tell you how to beat the game. Well, I just thought that part was really nice, just to see that caring of a person that early on in the game, in the show. What at first But actually, this is like the first time we really see the female protagonist, Asuna. But what actually, the second episode features probably one of my most favorite fight scenes in the entire show, when Asuna and Kirito are going back and forth fighting the final boss. I mean, the first floor boss. After, what, I don't think this counts as spoiler, but it might be, the leader of the party that Kirito and Asuna were in when they went to fight the first floor boss, actually died in the fight because he tried to fight him by himself. And there was something unexpected that happened. But I'm not saying it just because I don't know how to pronounce the name of the weapon that he used. But the first two episodes I really did enjoy. I highly recommend them. And before I sign off, I'm gonna tell you guys some of the other anime that I'm gonna be reviewing on this channel. I recently got the DVD, the complete series DVD set of Cowboy Bebop, so I'll be reviewing that. I'll also be reviewing Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood, Psycho-Pass. I'll continue doing the Kai stuff, but I only have it halfway into the Cell Saga, so I might just go as far as the Imperfect Cell Saga. That's probably as far as I'm gonna go until I find more episodes. Then I will go farther. And also I'll start reviewing Dragon Ball GT. And this new show that I heard about, what actually premieres tonight on Toonami, called Akame, I can't pronounce it. May God be with you, and see you next time. Like I've done with my past two, hello there, people of YouTube. I am the religious fanboy. And like the past two videos, if you're just wondering why I'm wearing the same thing in all three of them, is I am filming them all three in a row. So, yeah. I'm gonna read from the Book of Proverbs. Chapter 3, verse 3 through 7. Never let loyalty and faithfulness leave you. Tie them around your neck. Write them on the tablet of your heart. Then you will find favor and high regard in the sight of God and man. Trust in the Lord with all your heart, and do not rely on your own understandings. Think about Him in all your ways, and He will guide you on the right path. Don't consider yourself to be wise. Fear the Lord and turn away from evil. Two episodes I told you about how I was gonna start doing like a mini-series thing where I review the DC graphic novel Forever Evil and the Android Saga in the same video. What I'm gonna call it on the title is, this is the preload episode. What the things that I'm gonna review are Justice League issue number 23. But this is the final part of Trinity War. What I might review the entire event later down the road. And like always with the past DBZ reviews, I'm gonna start with the show first, because it's usually the less time consuming thing. And this one is called Goku's New Move Entrance Transmission. The 3-year training session begins. But not much happens in this episode. It is basically what it seems like. There is some funny stuff, I believe it's in this episode, of Vegeta and Bulma. I just think it's funny, those two. He's still trying to unlock Super Saiyan at the time. And Krillin goes back to Master Roshi's house. Some of the best artwork is, Krillin standing in the ocean, off the shore of the beach, and he's training in the water. The art, of the Ki Blast pushing the water and everything, it all looks really nice. And it is a good episode. Not much happens, and also they do a little bit of planning on where they should be at on the day the androids are supposed to arrive. I think the training sessions are just all really cool and good. And now on to the comic. I'm gonna kind of sum up what has been going on in Trinity War just a little bit. Basically, what you need to know is there's been a search to see who could open Pandora's box to send the evils back into it. And, the comic starts with a bunch of flashbacks of what has previously happened in the Justice League comic since the New 52 reboot. And, it talks about, it shows flashbacks to Starro and a bunch of other stuff, and also it goes to, the Outsider, and right now the person that has Pandora's box is John Constantine. You might know him if you're a big fan of the Image comics, or he did have a Constantine comic book title out at the same time as this event. And also he does have a new one that started in June. But I have not read any of. There's a lot of the whole bunch of people wanting to try to open the box. And they are, right now, like all three of the Justice Leagues, Justice League of America, Justice League Dark, and the main Justice League are still heavily duking it out. Oh, and Mira's in there. I did not know she was in this comic, but that is cool. Well, also this comic features Pandora, the Phantom Strange, and the Question. There's this really cool fight in between Superman and Wonder Woman. What if you know the New 52 continuity, they are dating? I wonder what toll that has on the relationship. And Atomica, you kind of see that she's kind of turned on everybody. What she has put a kryptonite thing, a shard of kryptonite, like into Superman's nervous system, so that's slowly killing him, and that's what's brainwashing him. And Atomica calls Cyborg a traitor. What there is a kind of somewhat disturbing part where the Cyborg's robotic suit is actually tearing itself off of him, because in a previous Justice League comic, right before the Trinity War, the Hall of Justice and this thing called the Grid, what the main source of the Grid's power is in Cyborg's suit. And it's just really kind of disturbing what the suit forms its own being called Grid, who's a bad guy who kind of plays a tech support bad guy in the in Forever Evil. And the person who finally opens the box, I don't think this should be a spoiler, but it might be, it turns out to be the Outsider who opens it, and then we find out it's a portal what actually sends all the, it's so powerful all the heroes are sent flying back, and the people who come out of the portal are none other than the Earth 3 villain team, the Crime Syndicate. What actually, I was really excited when I first opened this comic and saw they were in here, because one of my most favorite supervillain team is actually the Crime Syndicate. What some background information on the Crime Syndicate is basically that they are the evil Earth 3 versions of the Justice League. And the last page ends with the entire Crime Syndicate. What it turns out, Atomica is a member of the Crime Syndicate, and they all and the entire Crime Syndicate comes charging at the heroes as Ultraman says the world belongs to the Crime Syndicate. And that is where the comic ends. May God be with you, and see you next time. Hello people of YouTube. Last anime I reviewed was Sword Art Online. This video I'm actually gonna start reviewing another 90s anime besides DBZ, Cowboy Bebop. But first, let's see what random passage we open up to. I'm gonna read the first 5 verses of Mark chapter 14. After 2 days it was the Passover and the festival of unleavened bread. The chief priests and the scribes were looking for a teacher's way to arrest and kill him, not during the festival. They said, or there may be rioting among the people. While he was in Bethany, at the house of Simon, who had a serious skin disease, as he was reconciling at the table, a woman came with an alabaster jar of pure and expensive fragrant oil of nard. She broke the jar and poured it on his head, but some were expressing indignation. I'm sorry, some of these words I can't pronounce. To one another, why has his fragrant oil been wasted? For this oil might have been sold for more than 300 darnye and given to the poor. They began to scold her. And like I did with Sword Art Online, the first review I did of that, I am only gonna review the first 2 episodes. First, I'm gonna give a little bit of background information. There is the spaceship called the Cowboy Bebop. What the main protagonist is a former mafia member known as Spike, and his friend Jet, who they go on bounties, hunting down criminals just basically to make a quick buck, and because they don't have very much money. Well, I really like the first episode because it's a really cool pilot. What they end up fighting a crime boss that has like a drug addiction. What is basically a big fancy steroid thing that kind of makes for some disturbing imagery of faces. Well, I really enjoyed the pilot. It set the premise really well, and it was enjoyable. And in the second episode, there is this dog that is being sold by, I guess, like this one criminal that has a boss on their head. And something that is kind of cool that I really like about the premise of them just trying to get a quick buck even though they barely make enough money to survive. I kind of think of that kind of reminds me of times when God has provided for me in my life. But there's this really cool story that I'm gonna talk about. In one time while I was at scout camp, it was actually the last time I went to scout camp. There was one day when I was walking back from one of my merit badge classes back to the campsite, and it just started pouring down rain. And I was wearing glasses and everything, and the water was coming down at an angle, so it was basically hitting me right in the eyes and the glasses and everything, so I could barely see anything. And while I was walking, I was still trying to get back to camp, but I knew I couldn't make it back there, so while I was walking, I prayed and asked for there to be a shelter that I could stop and sit by and sit under until the rain stopped. And then, as I was alone, after walking a little bit longer after I finished the prayer, I found this weird entrance into a woodsy area that was like a paved trail, and it led to the camp chapel. So I walked into the chapel and sat down in the very front row, and then I looked up, and this is how I knew it was a chapel. When I looked up and saw the roof, I saw a wooden cross suspended from the roof. And that's also the moment that I knew that was an act of God that I found that place. Just seeing that cross there and seeing, after the rain stopped, the sun shining on the back of it, I knew that my prayer had been answered. And that is just a really, really cool story that I've shared with quite a few of my friends. And now I'm gonna go on to finish up the second episode review. And the really cool part about while Spike catches the person, I'd say the fight sequences are even more entertaining in the second episode. And they end up talking. The fight actually takes place in a pawn shop, what is really fun to watch. They did a lot of good art in that fight scene. That's something that I really admire about this series, is the art with the slow, how the animation flows really smoothly and everything, especially during the fight scenes, with the guns being fired and people running around. I really like some of the animation with that. And Jet and Spike do end up taking the dog and protecting the dog, and they do catch the bounty hunter. And that is where the episode ends. With that being said, may God be with you, and see you next time.